Like I said, the holidays are very important to me. So thank you for taking the time to catch up and so we can stay on schedule. This is our third class, and so I hope persons would have submitted some homework by now. I think there's about four persons that I have not received any homework from. And I think there was a little bit of confusion about question two, the terrorist financing homework. It was mandatory. I have mandatory written next to it, but I don't think that was clear. And so some persons have not submitted any homework. So this is our third week. We have one more week left after this. And so you want to ensure that you catch up on any homework that was missed. You want to attend Toastmasters, Rotary, or Kiwanis if you want the extra 5%. And you want to ensure that you go into the final exam with 30 points and ensure it's very easy to get the full 30 points. So ensure that you walk into the final exam comfortable with your 30 points. Okay, so have we had anybody that has attended Kiwanis or Rotary or Toastmasters?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and care to share? Okay, share with us for your 5%.
Well, I attended the Toastmasters on Wednesday, got an invite from Nikita. Overall, the session was very informative. I enjoyed the presentation that was presented that night. One person spoke on Alzheimer's. The other one spoke about the Andres experience. She really did a good job with that. She really made us feel like sorry,
Which experience is that? I didn't hear you.
the Andres experience.
Okay.
So
What is the
basically,
Andres experience?
So basically, she took us on a tour of Andres. She let us know what settlement was a good spot. For example, she said Crab Fest is something that take place every June. Well, of course, this year that couldn't be done. She said they have a lot of food dishes specializing in the crab dishes, I should say. And she said it's something that everyone should experience. And overall, it was really good. So I definitely have to add that to my bucket list to visit Andres. And I also learned a new word that I hope I pronounced it right. I think it's clinomania, that the lexicologist for the night presented. And it basically means excessive desire to be in bed.
Okay, what's the name?
Clinomania.
Clamomania. Okay, very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so are you interested in attending again? Are you glad you attended?
Yes, because what they did at the end of the night, they critiqued both presenters' speech. So they let them know what areas they need to improve on. And I think that's something that could be useful for me.
Okay, excellent, excellent. I'm happy you attended. I'm happy you got the word for the day and you plan to attend again. Okay, excellent. Okay, anybody else?
I attended the same meeting that night. There was a few of us who was in the same Toastmasters meeting. And I had the same experience as, I believe that was Shandika. And as she said, there were two presenters for the night. They presented separate table topics. And it was a very informative session. The topic was something about emancipation. So how the emancipation holiday just left. They presented on freedom is a must. So they just spoke about different periods in time, whereas we experienced, freedom. So I also learned that evening that the Pompey, it's not riot, Pompey, I can't remember what it is, but in Exuma, it was the first slavery revolt in Exuma. And then we also went through slavery villages in New Providence, Gambia, and Adelaide being two of them. And so, as she said, it was, just very informative. And It was not my first Toastmasters meeting, but I found this one to be very, very good.
Okay, excellent. Did you introduce yourself?
Yes, we did.
Okay, good,
We had
good.
to,
And so you hope to establish some networking contacts.
yes, they have another meeting this week, so I'm considering also tuning into that one.
Okay,
for this.
okay, excellent, excellent. And so if everybody wants to, who attended, can you just give me your name? Because I'm taking a list now to ensure that I have the grades correct. So if I have Shantika and Lisa,
Nikita,
Hilda.
Nikita,
Yulan.
Hilda, sorry, I didn't have the last one, Yulan.
Yes.
Okay, so I have Shandika, Delisa, Nikita, Hilda, and Yulan.
Tanya Barnaby was also there. I believe she said she's on her Sabbath today, so
Yeah.
she's not in attendance.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, very good. Okay, Hilda, any comments? How was your experience?
It was very good, very informative. I like the part where they started the meeting and they did all the announcements from the last two meetings to bring everyone up to date. It was really nice. I missed one of the speakers because my power went off, so I got cut off. But the lady who was speaking about the Alzheimer's, that was a very touching story. She was talking about her husband and how he developed Alzheimer's, I think over a 4-year period or something like that, and how their family was dealing with that issue and how you become from a man and you deplete right to a child again and you have to be taken care of, and it was very touching.
Right. Okay, good. And good that she was able to share that. So, sometimes we think that these things can't happen, and if they happen to us, we are surprised. We don't have any support. We don't know where to turn to. So, at least it would have given some awareness that these things can possibly happen at a young age, and other people are experiencing it, and because they have more experience than you do, they are able now to share. Because I'm sure at the beginning it's a difficult process. So this is what these groups are about: to give you support, to share knowledge, and like I said, to network, to keep you abreast of what's currently happening. I guess in the Bahamas as well, in the world. Okay, so I'm very glad that everybody found it beneficial. Yulan, so thank you, Hilda. Yulan, I know you're not in the field, in the industry. Was it just a bunch of stuffy people in suits? How did you feel? Did they make you feel welcome? Did you feel like
Yes.
you were part of the meeting?
Yes, they did. I mean, while I enjoyed the speeches, and they had a by-election in the meeting as well. So it just was pretty interesting watching the way that they do things in their organization. And, they just were, I guess, getting a few things together. And I guess when they would see inconsistencies, they'd say, okay, no, this is our policy. This is the way we do it. So it just was interesting to hear that, because at one point in the meeting, I think they were discussing their church service and things of that sort. And then someone brought up the idea to say, well, why don't we just make our own church service? And so one of his fellow Toastmasters, he was like, oh, this is a non-religious organization. I don't think that's something we, just had them talk about things like that. And then I was also proud to hear my fellow classmate, Nikita. I think she was in charge of the table topics for that particular meeting. So it was just interesting to see the way that they do things,
Okay, very, very good. And you felt welcome and you felt a part of the group. And that's very important because a lot of times we don't venture out because we feel like we won't fit in, or I'm not a part of the financial services sector. So, or this is a corporate type of a bunch of stuffy people in suits. But I'm glad that you felt welcome. You felt like you were a part of the meeting and you were happy to attend again. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, excellent. Okay, see, I'm very, very pleased, and I'm happy that this was this experience has been beneficial to all. Okay, excellent, ladies. Very proud today. Um, Newspaper clippings. Who would have had time to read the newspaper this week? I know this was a very hectic week. We were on pins and needles waiting for these announcements to be locked down. We didn't know how or when it would happen, but of course it has happened. I found the lockdowns to benefit me in many ways. I catch up on all my marking, all the stuff that I never get to because the week is so hectic. I've done a lot of housework, a lot of changes around the home to make it more comfortable since we have to spend most of our time at home, which is a good thing because normally we spend most of our time at work. So I hope that even though it's a scary time and we are worried about our health, we are happy that we have the extra time at home. So in terms of reading the newspaper, any newspaper clippings anybody wants to share this week? Or everybody have their 10% so they finish reading the newspaper. Simone, you have your 10%?
I did read a bit about one of the partners of, I believe it's Better Homes and Gardens and MCR Business Group. He was commenting on the commercial real estate industry and the fact that a lot of persons who are currently renting spaces are trying to, I guess, negotiate with their landlords to uh, allow for them to maybe sublease the spaces because they're realizing that they don't need such a large space. So yeah, they're trying to renegotiate their agreements, and they're actually finding it more beneficial to work from home. And another thing that he was saying was a lot of persons, or at least a lot of companies, are realizing that their employees are actually more productive, believe it or not, because they now work from home. So that was something that I saw, that yeah, they're trying to make adjustments to their leases so that they can cut costs there.
Right. Okay. Okay. Very good article because I also have some rental units and I know one or two of my tenants have experienced job loss, and
Right.
so even for the tenants that did not experience job loss, I extended the prime minister had put out that they should pay 60% and we delay the 40%. I offered that to everyone because just being home, I have a lot of kids and just to the grocery store, the prices have increased, and I have continuously had to go to the grocery store to buy cases and cases of meats and foods and what have you. And so I imagine anybody who is, normally we get a meal from one of the fast food places because we're out to work, and we only have a short period. But can you imagine breakfast, lunch, and dinner or having to be cooked every day, all day? And of course, we're a fast food nation, and so primarily my food bill has almost doubled, and then there's snacks and what have you. So yeah, I extended it to everybody, and I was thinking about I need to think outside the box and come up with a solution because the people need help. And I mean, when I look at my tenants, they've been very diligent, always paid on time. If they had an issue, they told me up front, and I was able to prepare. Because life happens, and so I really try to be as reasonable as possible because I do have a mortgage. But yeah, I'd like to brainstorm with some persons. And Mario Carey from MCI is very knowledgeable, so that subleasing is interesting, and I'm going to look up that article and see if I can come up with something to further assist. Because when you have good people, you don't just let them suffer. And
Right.
over a period of time, life happens and things happen, and some of these things we can't control. And so you exercise, you be empathetic, and you work with them. And I'm certain when they get back to normalcy, or when we all get back to normalcy, they'll go right back to their good paying habits or their good communication.
Right.
So that's very good and very interesting. So thank you for that. Okay. Anybody else?
Yes, I came across one article um, pertaining to police bribery. in
Okay.
the John McAfee matter.
Mm-hmm.
So John McAfee, he's basically a Bitcoin executive, and he attempted to bring 31 military firearms into the country.
Oh
And
yeah, I
he's
saw that.
alleging, yes, he's alleging that he offered police officers $1,000 back in 2018 to secure the weapons for him. So Bahamian law dictates that persons can carry 3 weapons and 250 rounds of ammunition. And of course, he was trying to bring in 31 military firearms. So the police had seized 6 firearms, 6 rifles, and 6 shotguns, and a large quantity of ammunition. And so Paul Roll is now threatening to sue as John McAfee. He had produced several tweets on Twitter indicating how the Bahamian government, well, the Bahamian police officials were assisting him with smuggling these firearms.
Right, and
And they also, go ahead.
no, yeah, he went as far as to say that he brought them in to be sold illegally on the streets. Did you see that
Right.
part? Yeah,
Yes, he did.
I was astounded that he said that. Okay, go ahead. Mhm.
And they're describing him as a fugitive of law. So I just thought that that was interesting. You know, how he's trying to make the, I guess, Bahamian officials out to be these persons who, you know, don't follow law and all of that good stuff. So,
Right.
yes.
Yeah. So when I saw that article too, I said, this has to be fake news. And then I did a little bit of research and I saw that he has been arrested 21 times in various countries because he has
Mhm.
done the same thing. So I said,
Exactly.
okay, so because I was wondering, because when he played the clip where the police was exceptionally very nice to him and the way they spoke, I was like, this is how they need to speak to Bahamians, because they was like, yes, sir, thank you, sir. I want you to
Exactly.
understand that they quoted the law, and I was like, wow, what professionalism. But they did do what they were supposed to do in a very diplomatic way, which was to confiscate those weapons. And so, therefore, I'm surprised that he can say that he paid them $1,000 to keep them. Now, hello, are we still connected?
Yeah.
Okay, because I see something happen to my screen. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I watched it again. I said, wow, they handled this in a very diplomatic way, which is good because it's been shared. But I don't understand why he would say he paid them like to keep it on his behalf rather than they confiscated it. So Paul Roll has a right to, clear the name of the police officers who were involved.
Hmm.
But this guy McAfee is the antivirus system that's on every computer in the world. So that should
Oh,
tell
Exactly.
you the type of money he has. So it's good that the video shows the police doing their job, which is confiscating. And we, we are very shocked about the number of guns that are on the streets and the gun violence that happens every day, every day. A young guy in the Bahamas is killed. It's almost like, you have to put your son in the River Nile like Moses, or put the blood on your daughter to protect your home. And so we wonder, where do these guns come from and how are they coming into the country? And for many years, persons have said, let's check light for keep. Let's check all these private boats and yachts that are coming through that are left unchecked, and because we have not been able to, like, in mass find out how they are coming through, I believe, that they are, a lot does come through the light for key in the Albany and the Palm Key, because the police, like I say, they are very diplomatic with these types of persons, and they don't thoroughly check, like how they would if it was one of us, they would definitely turn our cars upside down or our boats upside down to look for these things. So I'm glad that they were vigilant and aware, that not just because this person has millions of dollars, he's allowed to break the law. So um, pay attention to it. My thing is, why haven't we heard about this before? Did we hear? Because that should have made the news that a private yacht was stopped and um, all these guns were collected. Did anybody previously hear this before McAfee himself put it out?
No.
no.
Right. So that's what I'm concerned about. Because we should have heard about this. Unless the only way I'll excuse it is if it happened recently. But if it didn't happen recently, I'm kind of concerned that they would not announce this in the news. I need to call Clint and say, Clint, why weren't you on this story? And find out where was his investigative press when that happened initially. But when I'm doing this pandemic, I have some extra time, so I'll put that on my list. Okay. Okay, very, very good. Very good. So everybody has their 10% because I've heard from Simone last week and this week. I've heard from Delisa, very excellent ladies, very proud. They also have their 5%. So they are definitely going to be walking into this exam with the full points. Anybody else needing to catch up? Some of this is the third week, and I don't know some of these names.
I need to catch up, Miss Bullet, because I read an article as well.
Okay, very good. Who's speaking? I'm sorry, because my screen gets blacked out.
Yulan.
Yulan. Okay,
So
Yulan. No, I have you down, Park, but go ahead. Since you
I
read
no
an article.
problem. It couldn't hurt. But I read article. I mean, to me, it seemed like a lot of fluff, like you say. But I read an article in the Tribune about I think it's the Inter-American Development Bank. They had
Okay.
approved they had approved a loan for 200 million. It seems as though they're saying in regards to foster what they call a blue economy.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Whereas it's
Oh,
like
sorry. What type of economy?
they call it a blue economy.
Okay.
I guess it's in reference. They call it blue, seeing that it's in regards to like fisheries and maritime and things of that sort.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just, I guess they were just giving a statement, about, I guess, the economic climate in the Bahamas right now and how it's, I guess, gonna, just keep us back on track. Or I guess, well, I can't say put us back on track, but more so just help us, I guess, keep our head above water for the
Okay.
time
In the
being.
fisheries, so they're gonna loan this money to the fisheries industry.
Yes, to the fisheries and the what were they saying? Marine tourism, I think, for lack of better words.
Maritime.
Yeah, maritime. I know definitely heard maritime and other things that I saw it. So
Okay. Okay, good. And this is an experience, and I'm so happy you found that article because too often we miss out on opportunities. Remember I said, if you hang out with friends, we party one week, we socialize, but those same 5 friends that you hang out with every weekend, take one weekend and invest together. Remember I had mentioned that?
yes,
Yeah, so when you read the newspaper and you see that there's something, how much was it? $2 million?
200 million.
Okay, $200 million.
Yeah.
When you see something like that and it says 200 million, the dollar sign should pop up in your eyes, and you should say, and it says it's for Bahamians. A part of this is for me, and you should then
Yeah.
start some research to find out how do I get this. And so the government announces each year that we invested so many hundreds of millions of dollars into the economy so for Bahamians. So a part of that is for you because you are a Bahamian. And so you research and find out how do I get a piece of this pie and what does it take? What do I need to do? And start to own because there are a lot of communities that the Chinese run a whole chain of food stores, the Africans run the cars, the Haitians run fish fry and most of the dock. So they have come from their country, and the Bible goes to say that no man can be king in his country, but whilst we are here, we can still have a piece of the pie. And all over the world, there's a little China, there's a little Haiti, there's I guess a little Africa, but there's nowhere in the world that I've been that I've ever heard of a little Bahamas. Okay, so when we read these things, we should, like I say, see the dollar signs and say, how do I get a piece of this pie? Don't worry about it not being in the industry that you're in, but all of us have talents, all of us can be entrepreneurs, all of us can find a way to help develop our country. Okay, and so we don't want to be upset with the other nationalities and say, oh, they're taking something from us because we have as much opportunity in some ways as they do. So we want to learn from them. The Chinese lives on 20% and they save 80. I normally ask my class members 1 week, if you get paid for 4 weeks, or whether it's monthly or weekly, try and save 1 week. Try and live off 20% and save 80% 1 week and just see how it goes. Okay, and that's how we generate wealth, and that's how we create an inheritance for our kids. Okay, so once you read this in the newspaper, go on a venture to find out, how do I get a piece of this pie? There are lots of needs out there in the maritime industry. You don't have to be a fisherman or whatever. I'm even thinking about purchasing a boat, just to have a side job or a side investment. Okay, because you normally need, in order to make it, you need 5 revenue streams. Okay, I've always had 2 jobs. One job pays the bills. The next job allows me to go on vacation, to buy a new car, to wear designer clothes if I so wish. But that one, the first job, is primarily only for bills. Okay, so you have to do something on the side, have a little side hustle, and this is how you get it, by reading and seeing what's in the newspaper and the opportunities out there. So find out. Maybe you can provide, be the person that picks up the sponges from the boat and drops it to somewhere else. Or, like I said, there's loads of opportunities out there. So find out, Yolanda, and some of that is in your industry.
It is.
Perhaps find
Mhm.
out how you can get a piece of that. 200
Yeah.
million is a lot. It's only 16 of us here, so that each of us could get. If only we don't even want 100 million, we want a couple of thousand and we'll be okay.
Mhm.
Correct?
Correct.
Right, right. So that's why we read the newspaper, to find out the opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so excellent, excellent. Okay.
Miss
And the
Bullard?
IDB even has a website where they say we have injected this into farming, this into fisheries, this into justice reform. You could open up a counseling center for the prisoners, or what have you, but and be paid to do it. So, like I say, look out for those opportunities. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, Miss Bullard. I just had a question before we got into the chapters for today.
Mhm.
I know I had extended an invitation to Rotaract Club of East Nassau's meeting on Monday, but now I'm realizing that the outline for the class, and you would have said just now that Toastmasters, Rotary, and Kiwanis um, are the ones that we should consider attending. Is
No,
Rotaract an option as well?
yeah, it's fine. It's
Okay.
fine. And like I say, any industry. I mean, there was one an industry update the other day with the Attorney General's office, or any type of seminar or what have you, and that was online. I don't
Okay.
expect you to go in public. Yeah, so any forum where you can network, and it's giving current day events.
Okay.
Okay, good, good. Okay, okay, very good. Any other questions before we get into the chapter? No? Okay, okay, very good. Okay, so we're talking about chapter 5, and I think Miss Bolette has talked too much, so I can rest my mouth today, and we can have a reader. So to
I'll
ensure
read.
that, who's not somebody already have their 10% down. Let me see if I know this name. Who's that, Nikita?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Nikita, you can read. I know you as good as I know Hilda, so go ahead. Okay, go ahead. You read. Okay, start with the FATF, and once you read, I interject and just give you some additional information. So go ahead. Chapter 5.
Chapter 5, International Standard. The Financial Action Task Force, FATF. The FATF was established in 1989. It is an intergovernmental body whose purpose is to establish international standards and develop and promote policies, both national and international, to combat money laundering and the financing of terrorism. The FATF Secretariat is housed in the offices of the Organization for Economic Development, OECD, in Paris. The FATF meets several times per year and brings together legal, financial, and law enforcement experts. The The FATF developed in 1990 the 40 recommendations following the terrorist attacks on 11 September 2001. The FATF expanded its remit to include the prevention of terrorist financing and issued 9 special recommendations. On the 16th of February 2012, the FATF issued its revised 40 recommendations, which includes the 9 special recommendations. The FATF performs the following tasks: setting international AML or CFT standards, monitoring compliance with AML CFT standards, promoting worldwide application of the
We lost
FATF.
you.
Beyond, the FATF performs the following tasks.
Yeah, okay. No, I mean, your voice went out. I couldn't hear you just now.
Oh, sorry. Setting international AML or CFT standards, monitoring compliance with AML or CFT standards, promoting worldwide application of the FATF standards through FATF style regional bodies, encouraging compliance of non-FATF members with the FATF standards, and studying methods and trends of money laundering and terrorist financing.
Okay, let me interject right there. So we are all comfortable with who the FATF is by now. We are familiar with the 40 recommendations, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, we are.
Okay, and so we know that there's a, it's an international body. We know that in 2000, they were responsible for blacklisting us. And what we did is we had to put in the shell of the law. This is how compliance was born 20 years ago. And we established those. They put out the 40 recommendations. We then created our regulatory framework, AML framework, that encompassed the 40 recommendations. And then we were able to come off the blacklist. We also know that in 2017, they gave us 17 years. I mean, there was, they had blacklisted us or gray listed us throughout those 17 years, but we know that the mutual evaluation was conducted in 2017, and I also sent that document. So by now, you should have had a chance to peruse that document and see where out of the 40 recommendations, 22 of them were deficient. And so in 2017, after that evaluation, we revamped and repealed all of the laws. We put some meat in it. We made sure persons can be hauled before the court, charged, and these laws would make sense and they would stick. And we updated everything in 2018. And so therefore, I think they would have taken us off some of the, at the end of the whole update and repeal and replace, they then said that we were largely compliant. And so we were removed from some of those lists. Now, remember the FATF is just one international body. And so therefore, they would have removed us from some lists. However, the European Union is also an international body who would have put some standards in place, and they didn't feel in regards to taxation that our laws were sufficient. And so through the IMF came in December, and as we turn over the page, we'll see that, and they left recommendations for us to update. Now the European Union or the FATF was supposed to come in May of this year to test our laws to see if the FIU, the Financial Intelligence Unit that receives the suspicious transaction report, if the reports that they were getting were being actioned, if everything was working good, if the laws were sufficient to, charge these persons, even if they got the seal as their lawyer, these persons would still go to jail. So what happened was, because of the pandemic, the FATF was unable to travel to come out and do this testing or this auditing of the new laws, and hence the European Union blacklisted us again or put us on some other lists. So that's where we're at. In terms of the government's response, last year, after we had changed the laws regarding tax and we had signed all these TI, these automatic transmission of information reports to these various countries. We have had some backlash, like France said, we're not sending the information. Other countries in Europe said we're not doing what we're supposed to do, we're not compliant. And so they would have blacklisted us once or twice. And so in the past, Ryan Pinder would have been the person on the PLP side who would have represented us, the Minister of Foreign Affairs or Finance or whatever his position was. And he would have said, you know, it seems like no matter what laws we put in place, we're still going to be ridiculed via the competition. You're essentially trying to wipe us out as a financial services sector. And so I don't feel like I can please you all. Now, again, Ryan is more reserved, and he would have said this in the country, but he didn't say this to the international body. However, Peter Turnquest lashed out at them and said, sirs, I put in the laws in place. 50 banks have closed. Regulation is expensive. We've done everything possible we can do, and you're still not pleased. I believe you are trying to wipe us out. And because of those statements, they said, okay, fine, we won't blacklist you any longer. The countries that feel that you're not doing what you're supposed to do are going to blacklist you. And hence, immediately the Netherlands blacklisted us, then Germany blacklisted us, then France blacklisted us. And so that would mean that they consider us as a high risk jurisdiction and that they won't do business with us. And so again, Peter Turnquest saw it as the same persons that are on the FATF board are the prime ministers and the presidents of these various countries. So we're dealing with the same players. And so therefore, that's why I always say we need a seat at the table, because we need somebody there to represent the Bahamas and to fight our battles. If we're not one of the decision makers, we are always going to fall behind, because think about the president of France being the president of the EU. Okay, he is going to do what's in the best interest of his country. If we had a seat at the table, we would do what is in the best interest of the Bahamas. However, if we are, feel that we're not qualified to take these positions, or we just don't want to do that type of work, or we don't feel like we can go international, we will always be like left behind and not have a say. And so whenever you see that there's a problem and you need to change some policies, you either need very strong allies or you have to go and do it yourself. And so at this point, everybody is fighting for their country. So we have to fight for ours. So we are the future leaders, and that's why we're in this class today. And again, this is just beginner's level, and we hope that some of you go all the way through. And we are not afraid to, like, no man can be king in his country, so we can venture out to England and out to Germany and to France and sit on these bodies, so the Bahamas will have good representation. And we can't be afraid. Like I said, we don't want to stop here. We want to get into Parliament. They're the same generations of politicians in the House of Assembly now, and they're not making decisions that are in the best interest. It's a family first type of situation. And so to do away with all this corruption or these bad decisions, we want trained people with fresh ideas, trained new faces. But a lot of people they're just saying, I won't take it on, it's too much work, it's not worth it. So we want to build up future leaders who feel that it's worth it and who will go there and change the status quo and make a difference. Okay? And so that's just an overview of where we're at, um, in terms of why we continuously get blacklisted. And so, of course, as a compliance professional, I used to always follow it. And now I just say, no matter what we do, they're going to blacklist us anyway, because we are the competition. Think about it, that we have a very strong offshore presence. And what that means is persons from France have their accounts here in the Bahamas, from England, from Greece. And once that money is here, that helps our economy. And a lot of times they don't get their taxes. But we would have fixed that. And now each country through CRS and FACA, they get their taxes. but they still want that money back in their country to help boost their economies. Okay, so just so you would understand why we keep getting blacklisted and where we're at as a country. Was that clear or was that a lot? And will you say too much?
Claire.
You sure?
Yeah.
Any questions?
Yes, I do have a question.
Go
Is there
ahead.
any way that we can challenge these blacklists? For instance, if we know that we are compliant, we're doing everything that the FATF suggests or recommends, is there any way that we can challenge these blacklists?
Well, we have challenged it. What they told us is in May, when we were blacklisted in May 2018, even though we would have signed the T's with the various countries for CRS and FACA, they said that they have two bodies. There's a technical body, and then there's a decision-making body. And in May of 2018, the technical department had received all of our information regarding the taxation, but did not communicate it to the decision-making body. And so therefore, the decision-making body decided to blacklist us. So basically, they said it was our fault. Operationally, we got your information on time. However, our technical body did not make our decision-making body aware, and therefore we blacklisted you. But of course, when that comes out, that's reputational risk and negative publicity, negative media for the country. And so therefore, let me just give you an example. I worked at an offshore bank where we brought our traders into the Bahamas, and therefore we said we do not want to pay. We paid $100,000 for Switzerland to do our trading. So we tried to bring our trading desk to the Bahamas to discontinue paying that $100,000 per year to Switzerland to trade on our behalf. And so in order for us to do that, we had to open up an account, let's say with a Morgan Stanley, a Charles Schwab, Wells Fargo in the United States. So we were in conversation with them back and forth. Our managing director flew to them and they basically said to us, we are happy to open an account for you. However, to facilitate your trading, we don't do business with high-risk countries or countries that are blacklisted. So we said we were not a high-risk country. We would have completed our, risk assessment back in 2015, 2016, and we were medium high. The governor is putting in incentives to ensure that we do not become a high-risk country. But they said it's 2018. If you cannot prove today that you're not high risk, then we will not open up an account for you. And the last thing out of the FATF was that you were blacklisted because you were not compliant. And so that's the net effect on the small business. And so that, therefore, we weren't able to open up that account. We weren't able to bring our trading desk from Switzerland. And thus we're paying Switzerland $100,000 for a function that can be done in the Bahamas. Okay? And so that was their excuse, and we told them this is the ramification, this is the reputational risk when you blacklist us. Now, we would have put a lot of things in place. We became largely compliant, and then they said, okay, we come in to check. So they were supposed to come and check in May. We got the pandemic, the world got the pandemic. They were not able to come. They had agreed after the technicality of not going to the decision-making body in May 2018, they promised us that before we blacklist you and cause you reputational risk, we will call you on the phone or send you correspondence to let you know that you are going to be blacklisted. And then we will give you a time period to respond to us and say if you would have done what you were supposed to do and this is our fault. That was the promise. However, again, they blacklisted us, the European Union, and without any word to our surprise. So again, the Attorney General said, listen, you made a promise. This is great reputational risk for the country. You made a promise to us that you would alert us and give us a time frame before you put us on the blacklist. And their response this time was that if there's a pandemic, they didn't have time to alert us. the decision-making body was about to make the decision, and they were not able to come in because of the pandemic and verify that we should not have been blacklisted us. So rather than excuse us and say it's because of the pandemic we weren't able to verify, they blacklisted us again, the European Union. So again, like I said, if you don't have a seat at the table, these are the type of things that happen. Because I trust you me, if there was a Bahamian sitting up there saying, "Yeah, no, there's no way we can blacklist these people. It's not their fault that there's a pandemic. We have to at least give them an opportunity." We would have had somebody to fight on our behalf. However, when we have a body where their intention is to, once we blacklist them, people who want to open up accounts now or do business will not do business with them. They will come to us via the competition, Switzerland, so there are strategies and tactics, but of course you cannot prove all of these things. But and they may say, of course we're working in your best interest, of course we will not try and give you, you know what I mean, blacklist you unnecessarily. So at this point, like I said, educate yourself, move up the ranks, and don't be afraid. Lots of people are coming into our country and becoming king. Don't be afraid to go into their country and become king as well. Okay, that's where we're at. Okay, does that answer your question, Delisa?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, great, great. All right, Nikita, thank you. Continue on.
CFATF. CFATF was formed in 1990 and has 20 members from the Caribbean Basin. The CFATF has issued 19 Aruba recommendations, which take into account issues relevant to the Caribbean region. These recommendations complement the FATF's 40 recommendations. CFATF conducts self and mutual evaluation exercises and typology exercises.
Okay, so the CFATF, like they say, there are FATF regional style bodies. There's one for Europe, one for China, so it's Asian, and various parts there's the Caribbean. So the Caribbean FATF, this is a very popular multiple choice question. The Bahamas is, of course, a part of the Caribbean FATF. Okay, and so just so you would understand, so when they came in 2017 and they did that mutual evaluation, it wouldn't have been the body out of Europe, but out of the one that has been established in the Caribbean. Okay. Okay, good. So continue on.
International Monetary Fund, IMF, or the World Bank. The IMF was established in 1945 as a specialized agency of the United Nations within the framework of the Bretton Woods Accord. The IMF was designed to avoid a recurrence of the problems of the Great Depression. Its focus was overseeing the international monetary system, preventing crisis by encouraging sound economic policies and providing short-term loans to help with balance of payment problems. Today, the IMF serves to stabilize the international monetary system and acts as a monitor of the world's currencies. World Bank Group provides financing, policy advice, and technical assistance to governments, and also focuses on strengthening the private sector in developing countries. The IMF keeps track of the economy globally and in member countries, lends to countries with balance of payment difficulties, and gives practical help to members. Countries must first join the IMF to be eligible to join the World Bank Group. Today, each institution has 189 member countries. The World Bank Group is one of the world's largest sources of funding and knowledge for developing countries. Its 5 institutions share a commitment to reducing poverty, increasing shared prosperity, and promoting sustainable development. The IMF works to foster global monetary cooperation, secure financial stability, facilitate international trade, promote high employment and sustainable economic growth, and reduce poverty around the world. The IMF's primary purpose is to ensure the stability of the international monetary system. The system of exchange rates and international payments that enables countries and their citizens to transact with each other. It does so by keeping track of the global economy and the economies of member countries, lending to countries with balance of payments difficulties, and giving practical help to members.
Okay, so about the IMF. Of course, I'm going to give you the sandwich approach. I already told you all the bad about these international bodies and all the bad they do to us. So now let me tell you the good. If you flip right over, and you would see a process timeline. And so this process timeline happened in October of 2018. And what happened was the IMF came into the central bank and they did work with the FATF and the other bodies to establish our mutually, and the CFATF to establish our mutual evaluation report. Okay, and of course we see all their tasks and what they're responsible for, and they are the regulator again, who most of the time they but you know how we feel about the regulator. They come to audit us. They come to tell us what's wrong. We could possibly get in trouble after they come out fix do these reports, and then we definitely have to create an action plan and fix a lot of things after they leave. So a lot of times we see them as the big bad regulator who come to tell us it's wrong. However, the IMF came in 2018 to help with this mutual evaluation report, or because of some things that they had found after they completed the report with the 22 deficiencies that we had out of the 40 recommendations. At the end of their visit, they gave a consultative report. Of course, they said that our tax system was not fixed because they still saw us as a tax haven, and using that to have more competition over various countries around the world. Um, a part of their consultation report, now we have to go back to 2018, they said that our disaster recovery plan, and again, all of this is going to be on the exam. So make sure you listen to this and be able to relate this back if there's a question. Um, Two questions. The first one is, and the multiple choice questions are very close. So the IMF has an array of tasks. However, the exam will ask you about technical assistance versus fostering global monetary cooperation and securing financial stability. So ensure that you know that on the exam, multiple choice, the correct answer is they provide technical assistance. Now, some of the questions are going to be close, so just so you would know, it's technical assistance through the World Bank Group. That's the multiple choice part. On the essay part of it, you're going to see a question about how did they help the Bahamas. So back to 2018 of October, they when they finished their review, they created a consultative paper, and in their consultative paper, please go online and Google this. They said that our disaster relief plan was insufficient, and so they gave a time frame in which the Bahamas was to update their disaster relief plan. And so there was some controversy in the House of Assembly because we used to pay an insurance, a natural disaster insurance. And so back in 2017 and 18, we would have had Hurricane Maria, Hurricane Matthew, Hurricane Joaquin, and we would have been paying $90,000 a year for those for that coverage of insurance. And under the PLP government, when they tried to collect on the insurance company basically said, or the National Disaster Relief Fund said, you didn't have excessive rain, so we're not going to pay. You didn't have a category 4, so we're not going to pay. And so, therefore, the PLP government felt that it was a waste of time to completely pay this $90,000 for a year, because when would we ever have a category 5 storm? When will we ever have excessive rain? It makes no sense to pay this policy. And so there was grand debate in the House of Assembly regarding paying this insurance for 2019, even though the IMF had come in and said you have a certain amount of time before you to update your disaster relief plan. And so the F&M acted swiftly because, of course, we wanted to show this body that we were being compliant. So they acted swiftly and they said, okay, PLP, we hear you. We understand that you say it's a waste of time, but until you come up with a better recommendation, we are going to pay this $90,000 and we are going to get the coverage for 2019. Now, they had not paid it for 2018 or 2017. And so therefore, with lots of opposition, the F&M government paid the $90,000 for the coverage. So we got the coverage for 2019. They also used dormant funds. We had dormant funds up to $80 million that were held in the central bank. And so the central bank basically changed the law and said, once the central bank would have gotten your dormant funds, which is money that banks would have been holding and had no contact with their clients for 7 or more years, then you must send it to the central bank. So the law had a glitch in it that said you may send it to the central bank. And so they changed the law to say you must send it to the central bank. That means the money now it belongs to the government. And so therefore, since they changed that to say must, then they also said after the banks would have sent that money after 7 years, the central bank will hold it for 3 years and then put it into the consolidated fund or the P&L of the Bahamas. And so therefore, that's a total of 10 years. They would hold your money and then you can't have it anymore. It belongs to the government. And so that's to the sum of $80 million. And I work in New York. That may sound like, oh, a lot, but I worked in offshore for 16 years. And for the 16 years, every year, I would have been sending 3 million, 4 million, 5 million people who just put their money in the Bahamas. They may have died, their families didn't know, and it was left there. And so now, at any point, I had persons over the years come back and say, oh, my husband would have died, here's the will, I'm the beneficiary, and I have given back millions of dollars. So now the government says there will be no give back. If 10 years would have passed, it belongs to the government. And so what they have said is out of that $80 million that they now have, $40 million will go towards disaster recovery. So we paid the insurance, $40 million for the disaster recovery. Then we also, with this good IDB who always loans us money, who works, I guess, along with the World Bank, they secured a line of credit of $100 million. And so those three approaches or those three we put in place to satisfy our disaster relief plan. Okay, and so then the IMF said, you're very diligent, very good. You put all these stipulations in place, and so I feel that you would be covered if there's a natural disaster. Now, this was in 2018, early 2019. And here's the exam question. Why was this important? Can anybody tell me? Hilda? Hilda, you awake or you sleep?
I'm here. I remember when that came out and I was in the bank and I was wondering why we were sending these funds from these accounts to central bank. Now I understand where all the money went to and what was being done with it.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so this is important because in September of 2019, what happened?
Dorian.
Very good, very good. Okay, had we not, if Dorian had happened in 2018, we would have not had a plan, we would have not had the insurance paid, and we definitely would not have paid the, changed the law for these dormant funds. Okay, we might have still been able to do it, but at the time Dorian happened. So just a few months before Dorian, we had updated our disaster relief plan because of the strong arm of the IMF. So we are thankful that the government acted swiftly. They didn't listen to the PLP and go to those debates and continuously be opposed. But this time, the PLP did have a valid reason. But Akitas actually stood up and said, what is the possibility of us having a Category 5 hurricane? What is the possibility of us ever having excessive rain? 1 year later, what happened?
Okay.
Excessive rain. That just like we have accidental insurance on our policies, so we were able to collect $14 million for the the category 5, and we were able to collect an additional 11 million for the excessive rain just 1 year later. Okay, so this is why you keep abreast of what's going on and how these bodies again what they do. You have to know the full story so you fully understand why the government makes these decisions and what happens. So in that event, even though we felt like, oh, we could deal with our own disaster relief, we don't need nobody to put pressure on us and make us put these things in place. We are thankful. We are also thankful that the government acted swiftly in satisfying the requirements, and look what happened. We had Dorian, and we were able to, I mean, it was very bad, the worst disaster in our lifetimes. I heard that this happened 80 years ago in Abaco, and Abaco was condemned. So a lot of persons weren't surprised, but at least we had those requirements in place, and we were able to collect from that insurance, use the line of credit from the IDB, as well as use that $40 million in the dormant fund. Okay, because of course we know all the infrastructure in Abaco had to be built back. Okay,
So that,
so
sorry, Ms. Bullard, the money will be going back into that island since that was basically the main island that got hit, that 14 million insurance.
yeah, it's specifically only for Abaco, yeah, and Freeport.
Okay.
Yeah. So thank God we had it in place, and thank God they came in when they did and enforced that we need an action plan right away. Okay, and so before they left, I think they would have left sometime in January or December of 2018, and they ensured that we put those requirements in place, and that benefited us greatly. Okay, essay question on the exam. Go online and do research and read up on it so you can articulate it properly on paper. Okay? Okay, continue on, Nikita.
Okay. Financial Sector Assessment Program, FSAP. The FSAP program began in 1999 in the aftermath of the Asian financial crisis. It is an in-depth assessment of a country's financial sector. Since the program's inception, more than 140 countries have requested the undergone FSAPs, most of them more than once. In developing and emerging market countries, the World Bank and the IMF join expertise to reduce the likelihood and severity of the financial conduct, joint FSAPs. In preparation for this assessment, a team from the IMF visited the Bahamas from the 23rd to the 26th of October 2018 to discuss the scope of the FSAP.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you for that. So full 15% for Nikita. Excellent, Nikita. Thank you very much. Okay, any questions on chapter 5?
This chart here, what they have, Miss Bullet, with processes and timelines. This just details what the FSAP does, or what they came to do.
When the IMF came in and what they said they had on their agenda and what they were going to do.
Okay.
Yeah. Because at the time, that's when this book was written, and so that's why the timeline was in there. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, good. So chapter 6. Okay, so when we did the statutory requirements, we would have covered half of this in terms of identification when we talk about customer due diligence. And so another popular question on the exam is, what does the bank staff have a duty of? Is it KYC or customer due diligence? And so a lot of people feel that KYC and customer CDD is the same thing. It's a little bit different. KYC is actually to know your customer, and that's what um, financial services staff are required to do, know their customer. Customer due diligence is once you would have collected all the identification information, what you do with it, how you handle it. And so the process, there are three types. There are exempted due diligence, or simplified due diligence, or enhanced due diligence. And so again, all of this is to prevent reputational risk, to preserve the veracity of the banking system, and to complement the bank's risk management. And so, of course, in one of the 40 recommendations, due diligence is one of the requirements. I think it's in Regulation 10, and it's either simplified, exempted, or enhanced. And so, in terms of simplified due diligence, you decide this based on the type of due diligence that is going to be carried out on each customer, depending on their risk rating. So, what we do is we collect all the information, all the identification information, the passport, the source of income, the proof of address, the nationality, and we have something called a risk rating form. So we risk rate them in terms of high, medium, or low, on categories of high, medium, or low. Once we would have risk rated them, and there's normally a risk rating form that has about 10 categories on it. Where's this person from? Is it a high risk country? What type of business are they involved with? Is it a high risk business? Oil, diamonds, correspondent banking? Do they have bearer shares? Um, is this a trust? There are various different high risk factors. So on this risk rating, there are, like I said, about 10 to 15 categories. And at the end of the risk rating form, you get a number. And so in the legend, it will tell you if your number is between 0 and 30, you're low. If it's between 30 and 50, you're high. Sorry, you're medium. And anything over high, over 50%, you're then high risk. So they are normally the categories. Again, different banks have different, or financial institutions have different categories. So once you would have been risk rated, then that determines how what type of due diligence do we carry out on you, whether it's simplified or enhanced. Now, the law says that if you're a bank or a financial institution um, with a regulator, or you're a regulated entity, we can give you exempted due diligence, which means I don't need your passports, I don't need your national insurance, I don't need the proof of address, I don't need to know what type of um, business you're invested in, because you have a regulator, and I trust that the regulator would have carried out due diligence on you before they would have given you a banking license, or a gaming license, or a license to carry out insurance. So let's just say that's the Royal Bank of Canada going down to the Scotia Bank to say, I want to open up an account, or Island Luck going into a Scotia Bank saying, I want to open up the account. Scotia Bank is supposed to say, Island Luck, you are exempted, and therefore we don't require any information from you. Now, it's a little bit different because in the Bahamas, we might tell you there are two types of entities. There's the Swiss, who is not conservative at all, and then there is the Canadians, who are very conservative, and then there are the local groups, Fidelity and Commonwealth Bank, who are in between. And so even though the law says that there are exempted categories, when I worked at Royal Bank said, oh, our internal policy says we don't accept exempted institutions. So if you are an exempted institution, meaning that you have a regulator, the gaming board, or the central bank, we do not accept exempted entities. If you want to open up an account with us, you are required to bring in that national insurance, that passport, the proof of address or what have you, or we don't open up your account. And so, therefore, persons have gone to the regulator and said, do you know that the Royal Bank of Canada does not trust that you carried out proper due diligence? And they are asking us to bring um, in all of this documentation when you are the law and you have said that we are exempted. But it was a lot of back and forth, but the central bank has said, well, that's their internal policy. We don't get involved in their internal policy. Whereas you would find like the Swiss bank says, okay, central bank said that you have your, they have all your KYC on file. Okay, fine. We just need a signature list. We don't need to verify the client. So it depends on the type of bank that you work to and their internal policies. Because the Canadian banks say, we don't care who you're regulated by. We need all that documentation on file. We're not gonna wait to get this information from the regulator if we have to sue you. Okay? So that's the exempted category where I think they say if you're registered, if on with the stock exchange, if you're publicly traded, any central or local government agency or statutory body, any financial institution. And the premise for this is that these type of institutions are regulated by the government or by one of the major regulators. It's very hard for them to break the law or evade taxes or to escape, so therefore you don't have to be so stringent with them. However, the Canadians say, just in case the government corrupt and they in cahoots with these institutions, get it from everybody, we ain't taking a chance. The Swiss say we need as much business as possible. Just do whatever the government responsible if this person doesn't do what they're supposed to do. Okay, so that's in terms of exempted. Simplified due diligence again, when we would have risk rated you and you would have come out as a low or medium on our risk rating sheet, then we say we only need proof of address, we only need passport, and we need source of income. And so it's a little bit more relaxed. We will world check you. If your world check comes out okay, then you're okay. And then our compliance officer can approve you. Okay, and so simplify due diligence. If you come out high risk, this is where a lot of work has to be done. Extra checks and balances. No longer can the compliance officer approve you alone. Normally, there's a compliance committee or a high risk committee. And if you're a PEP, which means you're politically exposed, then the board of directors of that company has to approve you and annually give a check on you every year to say, we agree that we will continue this account with the government of Angola or the government of Cuba or whatever government you belong to. Okay? And so, because again, loads of corruption. High risk means that you have a higher risk of money laundering or terrorist financing. And so we got to do more balances and checks on you. And so, therefore, in terms of monitoring, again, remember another statutory requirement. If you're simplified, we monitor you every 3 years if you're low risk, every 2 years if you're medium. In terms of monitoring, if you're high risk, every year. Okay? And so what happens in institutions is you will see that salespersons don't want to do the extra work. They don't want to do the extra monitoring. They have 800 clients. They don't have time to do a risk rating and a full review on each account because we're required to know our customers every year. So they try and ensure that any high risk if anything that would make you high risk, they try and change it so they can have low or medium risk clients, so they don't have to do so much due diligence on the client. So in terms of enhanced due diligence, where and a lot of people can't seem to explain this properly. So this is how you explain the difference between simplified and enhanced, which is another very popular question on the exam. So again, simplified, we will monitor you every 2 to 3 years. High risk, we will monitor you every year. Simplified calls for source of income, your job letter, where you work, a pay slip. However, enhanced calls for source of wealth. How did you acquire this money? Did you sell a piece of property? I need a copy of the conveyance. Did you inherit this from your grandmother? I need a copy of the will. So there's more due diligence that has to be done on this client. Another category is, like I said, The compliance officer alone can approve low or medium. A body, a compliance committee, or a senior member or the board has to approve high risk. Another difference is that, of course, we will world check, run your name through a special system that will tell us if there's any criminal activity behind your name, if you've ever been locked up for money laundering or terrorist financing, or if you have any tax evasion cases under your name. We do that on everybody. But on terms of enhanced due diligence and high risk, there's a special report that we pay. We pay $1,500 in my own institution for that person to go out into your country. Like we had some Venezuelans, so they would go into Venezuela and find out exactly who this person is and if they committed any crimes, or they would go into Russia, or they would go into the US if you were from the US, just simply because you had this high risk rating. And so we would pay for that report, called a proximal report, to be done to give a full background check. And these people, they out of Canada, they work with Interpol, and they go into like police records from companies all around the world. Okay? And so, again, that's how you do enhanced due diligence. I let a board approve, I mark you as high risk, I check your source of wealth versus your source of income. I pay extra money for this proximal report, or I do Google searches on you, or I do a world check, and I do LexisNexis. And so there's no written procedure on how you do enhanced due diligence. It's different across various institutions. But when the regulators come in or audit comes in, they ask you, how did you perform high enhanced due diligence on this client? What is different from simplified versus enhanced? And how do you prove that you would have done a more in-depth check on this person? I tell them, first of all, I rated them as high risk. I review them annually. I ask for their source of wealth. Our compliance committee approved it. And I paid the $1,500 for the proximal report, which went into their country and said that they weren't a criminal, and gave a background check on their business. And so this is how I would have verified this is a person who we can open up this account for, even though it's high risk. Okay? Are we able to explain the differences between simplified and enhanced?
Yeah.
Fire tablet. I don't have a name, but I see something that says fire tablet.
Hi,
Hi. What's your name?
Anthea.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Anthea.
Okay, Anthea, right. Okay, I know the name. Are you able to explain the difference?
Yes, I think so. It was kind of a lot.
It was a lot. Okay, so give me one difference that you would mention. If I come into your office, I'm doing a audit report. Give me, how do you determine what enhanced due diligence did you carry out on your client, on your high-risk client?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you too well.
Okay, what enhanced due diligence did you carry out on your client? Okay, you want me to give you a minute and I'll come back to you? Let me ask Pratt. Marquita Pratt?
Hi.
Hi, what enhanced due diligence did you carry out on your client? No, demerit? It's a dear demerit?
Hi, Miss Bullock. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
What was the question again? Sorry.
What enhanced due diligence did you carry out on your client?
I could research. I could Google information on the client to, I guess, pull up any history or information on them.
Okay.
I could get their, sorry,
No, go ahead, go ahead.
I would get their information, like their address, where they work, the source of wealth or source of funds.
Okay, now remember we want to distinguish the difference between simplified and enhanced. So if you're getting source of income, are you getting that for source for enhanced or simplified?
Simplified.
Okay. If you get there where they work, are you getting that for simplified or enhanced?
Would that be for both?
Okay, right? And so what would you do differently? So that source of income, what
Definitely.
would you get for enhanced?
Enhanced. I would need the source of wealth, like I guess the documents to say where the wealth came from, like conveyance, as you mentioned earlier, or like a will or something like that.
Okay, right. Okay, correct. Very good. Very good. Um, let me see who else I didn't hear from. Zalika.
Miss Bullet, I have a scenario question when you're done.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, in an instance where, because I work in the bank, an instance where we let's say we have a client that's come that came before us, let's say for a loan purpose, and he filled out the information. Now with our institution, once your loan is approved or whatever, then we proceed with opening your account. And upon review of the client, we notice that he has negative media, let's say charged before the court for housebreaking or murder or some case of some sort. Then we refer them to the compliance department for further review. Now the compliance department says that this customer is high risk, but then it was a situation where I was in where they say, okay, the customer is high risk. We don't recommend you proceeding with the client, but because it's a loan, the business or the branch itself still has that authority to say, okay, we'd still like to do business with this client, even though negative media was found. How does that work?
Okay, so each institution has a different policy. Now, remember, there's international standard law, guidelines from your regulator, and then your AML policy. In your AML policy, normally on the second or third page, you will write what an undesirable account is. And normally, an undesirable account is persons who have been charged before the courts, persons who have been to jail and charged with money laundering or terrorist financing. So if your AML internal policy says this is an undesirable account, when audit comes in or the regulator come in, they do not expect you to have anything, any accounts that are undesirable, because this is what you said our internal policy is, and this is what they check for. However, there has been cases where um, persons would have been charged before the court, would have been to jail, and they have paid their debt to the society, and so therefore we consider them okay. They already been to jail and they come out. They still need to do business, and so therefore we approve this account. But again, all of that has to be documented and in writing. So if you make any decision outside of what your AML directive says, you just have to document it and say this is the reason. This person would have already been to jail, paid its debt, and so therefore, even though it's undesirable, we make an exception. Central bank will write you up if you don't have that documented. So the policy is to be followed by the masses, and then there are one or two cases where we have to make an exception. If you find yourself continuously making an exception, then you have to change your policy and ensure that the regulator approves of it. Okay? Because you could say for some reason, let's say the Commonwealth Bank, a lot of people who have been to jail come to Commonwealth Bank to open up, and so we no longer consider people who have been to jail unless it's money laundering or terrorist financing. We do not consider them undesirable. So you just have to document what your policy is.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Another right. And so, like I say, in the offshore world, because once we get this proximal report where we would have paid $1,500 for, we do find that some people have been to jail, they have cases pending. Once it's not money laundering, we let them bring in a letter from their lawyer, and we put that on file, and the regulators have accepted that, and we say we approve that on an exception basis. But
Okay.
we do give them extra monitoring in the background.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Any Zalika? Enhanced due diligence?
Hi.
Hi. What would you do for enhanced due diligence?
Um, let's see. I'm not sure.
Okay then, so then we have to get back to reading this book, because when I tell all these stories, we falling asleep. So we have to read. I try to avoid us from reading word for word, but we have to get back to reading. If persons can answer the questions right after I finish talking, okay? So try to pay attention, try to be as participative as possible, okay? So you are clear.
Miss
Okay?
Bullard.
Yes.
So that you would have highlighted, right? Side and enhance. Now, I personally, I think I was getting a little swamped when I read the text. So by you breaking it down, I feel like, it's easy for me to interpret that and understand it and make comparisons versus the text. So my question, or versus reading the text, so my question is, if this was to be given to us in the exam, the way that you would have explained it, if we basically responded to the question in the way that you explained it verbally, is that sufficient for what you're looking for?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So what essentially, if they say what are the differences between, I expect you to say, once a person is risk rated, they will
Right.
be monitored according to their risk rating. And if it's low or medium, they would
Right.
be considered simplified,
Right.
whereas we only monitor them every 3 or 2 years.
Right.
If they're high risk, every year.
Every year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Some of the common types of services or products that would consider you high risk is like correspondent banking or PEP relationships,
Right.
or bearer share relationships. Then you would say for simplified, I would get source of income, which would be a job letter or in a pay stub. And for enhanced, I would get source of wealth, which would
Right.
be a copy of the inheritance or a copy of the will or any documentation to support how the wealth was generated. Because I don't want you just to write a list, but I want you to then explain what you would do.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay, good. Good. So then the text moves on to PEPs. And of course, all PEPs require enhanced due diligence, which is your cousin, a close associate, a natural person, socially or responsibly, a family member, a parent, a child, a spouse, a sibling of a politically exposed person. So anybody that would have run for government, be a part of the parliament, whether it's in our country or other countries. So one of the very popular ICA questions a few years back was, give me the definition of a pet, right? Very simple question. And in ICA, of course, we, like I said, we test understanding. And so what persons, they were kind of stuck because they said, okay, we can't just go to the central bank guidelines and say this what the definition of a pet is, and produce 3,500 words, because in ICA you have to write 3 papers, 3,500 words each on the AML side, and then on the governance, risk, and compliance side, another 3 papers, 25 to 3,500 words. So this excerpt of the central bank definitely isn't enough. So people were confused as to how do I answer this question. But if you delve a little bit deeper, you would find that politically exposed means something different in each country. And so World Check has written a big report on it, whereas what we found over the years is that um, in the Bahamas, you know, we say a close associate, your brother or your sister, your parent or your child. In Mexico, they have extended it to every civil servant, as well as in Russia. Every civil servant, once you work for the government, you are considered politically exposed. Whereas right here, we may say up to the permanent secretaries, like the commandant of the defense force, as well as the police commissioner, you know, but we wouldn't go as far as saying just because you're a civil servant. And so, therefore, that was the premise of the question, that politically exposed is different in Mexico versus the UK. The UK is less stringent, but why that's important is because we are an offshore jurisdiction. And so it came into question, if a Mexican comes to the Bahamas and opens up an account and says, Bahamas law does not consider me politically exposed because I'm a civil servant, whose law are we to follow? Delisa, do you have an answer for that? Whose law, if a Mexican opens an account, should we make them politically exposed? Should be classified as a high risk pet?
Repeat that one more time. If a Mexican opens an account,
Uh-huh.
should we
Where,
consider them as politically exposed?
yes, because in Mexico, the
Well,
Mexican
yes,
law
I think that we
says,
should.
right, and that's how it works, because we hold whichever law is more stringent. So the Mexican cannot argue that, well, I'm a civil servant in Mexico and Bahamas law does not require me to be a pet. But Mexican law requires you to be a pet. So therefore, you have to go with whomever policy is more stringent. Okay? And if you look at the old central bank guidelines, there's a list. It used to be a list of countries where they considered countries either Schedule 1 or Schedule 2. Schedule 1 countries meant that we have the same laws on file as any other country, or as stringent as any other country. And there was a list of countries. Schedule 2 countries mean that we don't have the same laws on our books. And so what happened in my own institution is we had accounts out of Antigua and Barbuda, and they were Schedule 2 countries. They didn't have all of the AML laws in place. So persons could walk into the bank and just open an account without an ID, and they wanted us to offer correspondent banking services. So when they wanted to send a wire, they had to bring their passport, and I don't think they have an NID, but they have something similar to NID or social service. And for us to send that wire, they would have had to send that to us to be able to send that wire, because they didn't have the same AML laws in place. Okay, so when the same laws are not in place and one is more stringent, you go with the country that it's more stringent. Because if we had not put him as a pair, and the Mexican government say would have sued us for, say, collusion or what have you, we would have been we would have been fine. We cannot say that that's not Bahamian law. Okay, so that you have to be careful when you open up um, accounts for different countries. You have to know what their laws say, because there could be some implications. Okay. Um, yeah, so that's the difference there, that various countries, and that was the premise of that question. Various countries have different definitions for who is politically exposed.
So, Miss
And so, go ahead.
Miss Bullet, with account opening, right? Me as an account opening officer, let's say I have like you said, a client from Mexico, and I'm not aware of the laws or the country's laws where they stand as who is a PEP and who is not a PEP, and I carry this to my branch compliance officer. Are they trained to know the different laws in different countries to say?
Yeah, they should. You must know as the compliance officer. In fact,
Yeah.
compliance is everybody's business. And so
Right.
if you in account opening, it's not only
Mhm.
the compliance department's responsibility. You should
Mhm.
know as well that um different countries have different laws, and you want to ensure that um you at least identify on
Mhm.
file that Mexico considers this person a PEP because they are a civil servant. And so you should at least have it documented, and then you can have it documented that um, the bank decided not to um, classify this as a PEP because there's no risk, or this person is just the janitress or something that affect. And so we didn't see any risk, and they only get salary from their job in the Bahamas. No wires are coming in from Mexico. But when you have wires and exchange back and forth between Mexico, that's where you want to make the changes to PEP, because you have to like know your customer and know what type of profile he has committed to. And so if wires coming in from that country, then you know that there could be some ramification if something happens.
Yes, wow.
Okay, so you just want to be careful. The regulators, we don't expect you to know all the details, but we expect you to be have some awareness that yes, I know this person is a Mexican, and I do know in Mexico the law is different, and we are aware of that. It's when we say, oh, we don't know and we're not aware of the risk. You say, I know, I'm aware of the risk, and I have put mitigation in place to ensure that the bank is protected. Okay?
Yes, wow.
Right. And so these are the brothers, the sisters. Remember, I told you, Brave Davis, our daughter got married. The guy had an account with us. He was low risk prior to this marriage. And had we been afraid to ask if there were any substantial changes in life, or did you get married? Did you have kids? And he said, oh, yes, I got married. I said, oh, congratulations. Who did you get married to? Oh, I actually married the opposition leader's daughter. Ding, 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 ding. Okay, congratulations. However, we need to update your account, right? And we now need to label you as a PAP, and you will be monitored annually. So now I call you every 3 years. You can expect a call from me at least once per year. Okay, and then every year the board decides are these risky clients. Let's talk about Shane Gibson when he would have been hauled before the courts, and the banks where he would have had accounts. Now the board needs to decide. Well, last year he was our minister of whatever ministry he was the minister of, and now he is hauled before the courts. Do we keep this client? You see? And then again, you have some people on that say, well, he is just been charged. He is not, he's brought before the courts, but he won his case. So then you go and close, would have closed the account. Now you open it back up, and it might, it depends on your policy. The Canadian banks would not care. But of course, the local banks, you have to be careful with that. So, you just make note the file that while our AML policy says anybody who's been charged before the courts, this is now an undesirable account, we will monitor the situation because he was charged with corruption and bribery. So you want to be extra careful with that. You can't, if you leave the account open, you at least want to make note, because depending on if the regulators are FNM or PLP, the outcome may be different. So you have to just stay on the fence and be neutral, but at least make note to the file. Um, so in terms of politically exposed, this is why you want the board to confirm, that they want to continue the relationship, because that's a body, not just one person, who should make a educated decision on the risks involved and continuing on having that account open by that person. Definitely, if he is charged with money laundering or bribery or corruption, you want to, and he goes to spend jail time, you want to close out that account. Okay?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Claire.
Okay, good. Good. And sorry, that's why I said if you all stop me, I don't want to overwhelm you all. It's a lot, it's loads of information, and I have loads of stories, but I don't want, I want y'all to be able to retain this and be able to put this back on paper. So stop me, or let's have a discussion. And because if I have 10,000 stories, I'll never stop and tell what time is supposed to end. It's 10 minutes after 11. Yeah, yeah. I will talk, and then you'll be like falling to sleep. Hilda, you still awake?
Still here.
Still here, right? So I don't want y'all to fall asleep. I want us to this to be as lively as possible. But the questions asked so far was very relevant. I'm very pleased about the newspaper articles that were shared, and they're very beneficial. And now I have some homework to go and do some research. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so are we clear on who is simplified due diligence, who is enhanced due diligence, and who are PAPs?
Yes, that is clear. Just one question. If the question comes up, what does the bank staff have duty of? Is it twofold that we need to say their first duty is to know their customer, and to know their customer, they must do their customer due diligence? Is that how we would approach a question like that?
Yeah, so it's going to be a multiple choice, and it's going to ask you, it's the bank's duty to know your customer or to carry out customer due diligence. And so while both are duties, what is the first step that you take? That's how close the questions are.
So
Okay,
the
so
answer for
what would be the first stance? To know your customer, right?
yes.
Yes, okay, good. Okay, very good. Okay. So any questions or concerns or
And with answering the essay questions in the exam, what amount of words you looking for during the exam?
so each essay is worth 10 points. And so when we do review at the end of the session next week, I'm going to email you a review sheet, and we are going to do some review. Sometime this week, I'll email you a review sheet, and we'll have some review. And each question, what I ask you to do is write down 10 points and bring it to the review, and let's have a discussion. Miss Bullet, is this relevant or is this fluff? I want to answer the question on enhanced due diligence. Would I get any points for this? Because a lot of times we just run on and on and on with things that don't make no sense. Like people will start that money laundering. It has three. They love this phrase. There are three stages of money laundering: integration, placement. They'll run on and on about placement, integration, and then say enhance due diligence and simplify. No points for that whole run. Or that was fluff. That wasn't relevant. Only points. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to come. I will send the sheet out. I want you to come and ask me, if I put this in my essay, does this make sense? It is discussion based. I'm not gonna sit there and talk for 3 hours. We probably have 30 minutes, 40 minutes after the lecture, because next week we're gonna talk about court orders, and then compliance systems, and yes, and then we'll be done. Next week will be the last class, and we have a review.
I thought the review.
And then I want you to.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I saw that there was one Saturday designated for review only, the 22nd, no?
Tell me what the front of your book says, because my book is an old book, and my book say chapter 7 to 8 and review.
Oh, separate class. So the 15th would then cover the last two chapters. The 22nd is review only, and then the 29th is the actual exam.
Okay, that's fine. We can do it separately. No problem at all. Okay.
Just
okay.
So make sure.
So the exam date is the 29th, Ms. Bullen?
Yeah. So if we're still on lockdown, we will just do it online, and I will send you some instructions during the review in terms of what you need to do online. So you can start to prepare. You cannot use a cell phone. You have to have a computer with a camera on it. You cannot use a separate device. It has to be uninterrupted time. Nobody can walk in and out the room. If you get up from your seat, you will be locked out from the exam. So no getting up to use the bathroom or the phone ringing or whatever. No cell phones allowed. And so I'll send you a list. So if right now you don't have a computer with a camera, please just let me know. And you will have to either reschedule or borrow one. Perhaps the institute may loan you one just to sit the exam, so you can take it when everybody else takes it.
Okay.
Okay, so so I can wait with the review. So we'll talk about court orders and compliance systems next week, and then the week after is review. That's fine. With politically exposed, and this is for chapter 7 and politically exposed. Michelle Reckley, she was the lady that one of the first persons to be charged with money laundering in the Bahamas back in 2017, 2016. Um, she was the director of urban renewal. She filtered more than $1.3 million through CIBC and the Teachers Credit Union. They term it unexplained wealth. And in 2018 was when they revamped the law to include unexplained wealth. So initially, she would have been charged with about 54 counts of various different crimes. However, the law found that at the time of her crime, unexplained wealth was not on the books. And so a lot of the charges were dropped. So I want you to read that case in preparation for next week for court orders. But now that we're talking about enhanced due diligence, at that time, back in 2016, before all of this was being enforced, would we have labeled her as a pet? Who in the bank? Who works at a bank?
I do.
Who is that, Samoan?
No.
Nikita.
Nakita. Okay, so she is the director of urban renewal, and urban renewal was a ministry that the PLP just created, not a regular Ministry of Works or tourism or what have you. Just like we have just created a Ministry of Disaster Recovery. So would your institution at that time considered her a PAP?
No, we could because she will be in close association with political persons or government officials. But
Right, and
then,
she is politically exposed.
right. But then
And
again,
mhm.
she's only I mean, because of her position, we could say yeah, she's a fab. But then again, I wouldn't say so.
Okay, so let's look at the bottom of 43. Politically exposed means an individual who has been entrusted with a domestic prominent public function, inclusive of a head of state or government. That's all our ambassadors
Mm-hmm.
to different countries, a legislator, a politician, a senior government, judicial or military official,
Mm-hmm.
senior executive of a state-owned corporation, or important political body. That means state-owned corporation used to be BTC at one point.
Yeah.
So even the head of BTC or the head of BPL
Mm-hmm.
should be considered a PAP. All of them are politically exposed.
That's true.
Right. So that was then before she is charged. Now she is charged. Did our banks update our policy and say everybody from permanent secretary or all these directors must be politically exposed, or we don't want to do the enhanced due diligence and we don't want to do the extra work. So we working along with the salespeople to ensure that all this Google chat, this $1,500 and this continuous monitoring, we don't have to do. So we labeling them properly. Simone?
Sorry, I need you to repeat that one more time.
Yeah, so are we now that she is charged and before the reports, have we changed our policies? Are we now at least monitoring them more closely and checking these profiles to ensure that We don't facilitate money laundering in our institution.
You
Yes.
should be, yeah.
Yeah. So you saw a change in your institution?
For my personal institution, well, it's a development company, so it the any I guess any type of monitoring we do is on the real estate side, so making sure that we put in place KYC policies for persons who are interested in pers- um, purchasing real estate. And just recently, we had a compliance officer who was assigned just sometime last year. But prior to that, I don't think we had anyone in place.
Okay, yeah. So last year was the first year for real estate companies, accountants, and law firms. They are now
Okay.
regulated by the Compliance Commission. So in those 22 deficient recommendations, that was one, and they call it designated non-financial.
Financial,
Yeah. So
right.
now that was one that was updated, and so in 2019, if they had a corporate service provider's arm, they could not get their license if they didn't have a compliance officer
Compliance officer.
on staff. Right, right. So that's what I'm trying to find out is anybody that works in the bank. Did we change any policies after we saw the directors starting to be brought before the court? Wasn't only the Campbell lady that is most recent. Elmer Campbell has also been brought before the courts, and I'm wondering, did we have her listed as a PEP, or because she's not an MP, we did not list her and consider her and her family because her son should have been. If she is not a PEP, then her son definitely isn't a PEP, right? And so it says family members, anybody who's closely connected, anybody in the bank saw a change or no?
Yes, we did. We did update our policies. Miss Fuller, I also have a question.
Okay.
With the PAPs, they normally say close associate or family members. Family members goes to what we say is like immediate family members and household. Let's say two cousins and great granddaddy. Would they still be considered a PAP of a person?
Yes.
Mm, I didn't know that. So any family member down along the
Yes,
line,
who is
because
political? If this a family member who you could say, "Oh, that's my cousin," and I never spoke to him, I see him for 10 years. But if you are closely connected, if you are a close associate, like the prime minister's best friend,
right.
and that's a PAP. And so another thing is that before the laws changed, the central bank guidelines used to say a PAP is be a PAP until 1 year after they would have left office. But the laws has changed because they realized that even after, like Perry Christie would have left office for about 3 years now. However, he's still a consultant. I'm sure when election time is, he will still be on the election, supporting them, giving them consultative notes and what have you. And so it's been changed to now say once a PAP, always a PAP. So some institutions take that on, and some let's say, well, the law doesn't stipulate how long. Some of them still keep it as 1 year. So you want to check too to see what your institution's policy is. But I believe once a PAP, always a PAP. Now, after 20, 30 years, and if they near retirement, then I would, do some extra due diligence, and I would be able to put a memo to file to say, this person been out of office for 20 years. I don't see the affiliation any longer. We could change them from being a PAP. Okay,
That's my
it's on a case by case basis. Okay, so for next week, read the Michelle Reckley case, read the Alma Campbell case, and come prepared to discuss um, court orders. I ain't talking at all next week at all. So come to be having a discussion based on these orders and on chapter 8. And then another one too we could talk about is Nygod. He has been charged with various things from 1970, they say, and has never been to jail. Okay, so let's find out exactly what happened. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, good. Any questions or concerns?
No questions from me.
Questions from you?
No questions from
Oh,
me.
no questions. Okay. Okay, good. So we good. The persons I only have, let's see how many persons are on this call. I have 15 participants and only 5. Is it 5 persons? Where did I write that? Somewhere in this book, I wrote the amount of persons getting 5%, but I can't find it right now. But yeah, it's about 5 to 7 persons getting 5%. So ensure that next week is the last class. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Tanya, Yulan, Hilda, Nikita, Delisa, and Shanika all have the 5% plus the 10. Okay, so make sure next week and between next week and review class that we get our 5%. And then most of you have done your 2 pieces of homework as well. Very good. I got those grades out. Some persons might have got their grade early today. Um, and so you'll get your grade for next week. If you would have done the second piece for next week, or you can wait till the week after, that it's fine, it's flexible. But like I say, one more class, ensure you go into this exam. It's very easy to get the 30% and be comfortable when you sit the exam. Okay, so I'll send out the review just so you could start to work on it and decide which questions you wanna answer. Because preparation is the key, not to run out of time, and you need to go in knowing that there, of course, there's going to be a question on FATF, of course, one on money laundering, of course, one on terrorism, of course, one on statutory, and these are the 7 that I choose. And so I am going to write my points and use the opportunity in the review class now that we have a whole separate review class to ask my questions to ensure that they are relevant and not just fluff. Okay, and we have the key pieces that need to be in there because I found in the terrorism that there were a lot of relevant stuff, but the key things, illegitimate versus legitimate, and objectives was for travel, recruitment, and training, stuff like that. A lot of people didn't include that, but they did have other relevance. And then a lot of persons gave scenarios on how they could carry it out or how they use charities. However, 1 or 2 persons did not include an example. For example, the charity and blah 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 was used to facilitate this, or they said sympathizers, but they did not say the young boy who robbed the grocery store or got a loan or what have you. So you want to ensure that you have the objective, the purpose, and an example. So you show that you clearly understand, the question. But I was overall very pleased with the homework. Very good. Okay? Okay,
Okay.
good. So if that's it, we'll end now and we will meet again at 9:30 next week.
Okay.
Everyone have a great week.
Okay, yes. Have a great day and be safe.
Good day, everyone.
All right. Bye.
All right. Take care.